right, hello everyone. We are now back for our little after show segment, last call. So hopefully you took the time to go out and grab yourself a drink. And I've got one reader question for both of our executives here. What are some of the advantages of having professionally trained musicians in administrative roles compared to those roles being filled with individuals that have training in mostly from the business, marketing, and other non-music fields? That's from one of Adaptistration's readers. So, Jeff, you're first.
Well, I can reflect on it myself. I mean, so I think having had years of being on the stage, you have now as an administrator, I have the appreciation to know what those stresses are like, and they're really substantial. It's hard being a musician on stage night after night, and your job is to be perfect. I think that gives me empathy to understand what the musicians are going through. I'll just take it a little step further. In many orchestras, there is a little bit, at least, of crossover between musicians who then have some administrative role. I think as much cross-pollination as you can have, and that sort of the various challenges, trials, tribulations that everybody's going through is globally appreciated, just helps with empathy, because we all have our own stuff. And if you're totally removed from it, you think, what on earth is so hard about having a different podcast every day? You just get a person, you put them on the TV, and you press go. And you think, well, that's true, but there are a couple details to be working on. So, as much as you can have cross-pollination in roles and the people doing them, I think that's good for the whole organization.
Give me one tangible example of where that empathy is most valuable.
Like with a position? Like with a person, you mean?
Or just a large skill that as an executive, like for example, labor relations. Does empathy help or hurt in that situation?
Of course. I mean, trying to create an environment where we with the members of the orchestra are then together trying to conquer some challenges that exist, right? Versus we are trying to conquer the other side, right? I'll just give one more little referral of if people are looking for interesting things to consume these days, there's a wonderful masterclass segment on negotiation by a guy named Chris Voss, which is incredibly well done, and it helps build empathy in these little tools. But what we talk about labor relations, I'll just even talk about finance. And our CFO is the mother of two totally incredible musicians. And so she does see it through their lenses of wanting to have a future in the orchestra world. And then also says, whoa, it is hard to make this work. How do we effectively create a narrative that the musicians, will really understand, that describes everything that's happening, not just one side. So anyway, I see it all the time. And the more we see it, I think the better we are.
Zach?
So I have to say, I have the privilege of working in an orchestra that has been exploring this dynamic for decades. My predecessor, Bob Bell, was a musician in the orchestra for many years, became manager in the 80s, and then ascended to what's now the president and CEO role. And one of his big focuses was having a large corps, a very large corps for our level in the tiers of the League of American Orchestras. So if we're going to have 60 people in our corps, how do we find new ways to provide engagement for those people in the organization and vice versa? So we, back in the 80s and 90s, were putting a lot of musicians into administrative roles. And I remember when the Mellon Foundation first started to really envision what the orchestra of the future was going to be, they focused a lot on this dynamic in Toledo. And we've talked to a lot of consultants who are now coming all the way around for another tour through Toledo, saying, I remember when we first came through here in 87, 89, 91, and the big thing that you guys were doing was employing your musicians in administrative roles. And it's something that we still do. and it's something a lot of orchestras have now come to do. I find that it's very important because it allows us to never lose sight of that mission, to always be alongside people in the office who are going to be on stage in a couple hours, and that we can always collaborate from a creative perspective. So you have people who in one office know exactly what the horn line in Alpine Symphony sounds like, and somebody in the next office is trying to find new marketing ways to sell tickets to that. Now, I wish we were always doing Alpine Symphony, but nobody seems to want to do that these days for a variety of reasons. But I mean, that is really important when you're coming into an organization and you're looking to the left and you're looking to the right, and you want to know who your allies are. So in many organizations, you'll figure out who gets it and who doesn't. But if everybody has that common core, it elevates the people who are not musicians to become thinkers like musicians. And it means that those of us who are administrators, who are looking at budgets and line items and margins, we have to think of these things in artistic perspectives. And it prevents us from falling into the trap that a lot of organizations do when they bring somebody in from the business world and simply expect them to run it as a for-profit business. And that usually ends up with a lot of dissatisfied people, a lot of disenfranchised donors, a lot of people who are musicians who are no longer working, and basically a bust. So what I'm trying to say is that this has been a decades-long experiment that continues to really salivate in Toledo, in that we can always say that when we sit down at a table, whether it's the lunch table, it's a bar, or it's a negotiation table, we can see each other for transparency and for a commitment to doing what we really all agree is a great service to the community.
And perfect timing and a perfect way to end this. And that was actually a really good question from one of our readers. So I guess next time, hopefully when we get to actually see people in person soon, definitely the first round's on me when we have our second one of these guys. So thank you both very much for stopping by.
Thanks for doing it.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.